to our live stream. This is the second book club from James Bond Club Ireland and our first ever live stream. So we're super excited to be doing it. And we're super excited to welcome, first of all, our panel, but also everyone who might be watching out there in YouTube. So hello, everyone. For those of you who, I guess there's probably no one out there who doesn't know us at this point, but my name's Paul Lally, and I'm joined by Sean O'Hare and a wonderful panel of guests who we're going to introduce very shortly. We're going to be doing this celebration of Live and Let Die, the novel, for the next hour. Yes, we have restricted ourselves to an hour because we are Bond fans, we're Irish, so therefore, we are not succinct. We will talk and talk and talk until someone stops us from doing so. So what we're going to do is just try and get through a little bit of a format and see how it goes, and we hope you really enjoy it. If you're out there on YouTube and you'd like to send in a question or a comment, tell us how good, terrible, or amusingly we're doing, please feel free to do so. I'm going to just, before we kick into the entire evening's events, I just want to call out really quickly. Recently, many of you know that we lost our dear friend and co-founder, John Lennon, or Sean O'Lennon. Sean founded the group a number of years ago on his daughter's birthday, and he has been a force of nature ever since. He managed to get together a group of passionate Bond fans, engage them, and just really created a fantastic group. He created a fantastic atmosphere. He set the tone for a really positive experience among Bond fans in Ireland. And he really put James Bond Club Ireland on the map. He got the recognition, acknowledgement, and attention of many of the Bond community big hitters across the world. And we are grateful to him and we miss him. So I invite you, if you do have a glass with you, as I do, please raise it now and say cheers. We miss you, John. Here's to John.
Cheers, John.
Chin chin.
All right. On that note, my co-host tonight is the wonderful Sean O'Hare from Newry, a man I first met over a Red Stripe beer on a train to Belfast, which was outstanding. So Sean is going to explain the format and he's going to introduce the panel as well. So Sean, over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and good evening, everybody. Welcome along to our book club. Tonight, we're going to have a format that will be more like Paul and myself asking a number of questions to the panel. We're going to look at certain themes such as story, look at the characters, Bond's state of mind, looking at the travel sort of aspects of the novel, get the viewpoints of each of the panelists in terms of what their thoughts of overall of the book, and try and maybe summarize, finalize with about 55 minutes in and get the thoughts on maybe look at the book and the novel and the film, as well as the way the book hopefully sets up future novels. But look, I'll take you through our panel. First off, we have there is Kevin O'Callaghan. Kevin, you want to introduce yourself quickly?
I will, and apologies to anyone if it gets loudy because I'm on holidays at the moment and it's a bit of a noisy place where I am in Lagerland in Windsor. But if you are a Bond fan and you are here, come let me know and save me from other things. But just say hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Kevin O'Callaghan. I have a little Twitter account and a little Instagram account called @BondInColor. We colorize a lot of the old images, try to imagine how they look if we were looking at them today, and I probably interact with a lot of you in and out. So good to see you all, and good evening.
And next up we have, I'm just going around the screen, we have Owen Ling. Owen, introduce yourself.
My name is Ling, Owen Ling. But I think I'd be better off doing a Timothy Dalton impression, because he's my
We
favorite.
can expect a few of those, I imagine, tonight.
It's nice to be here. Live and Let Die is a favorite Fleming of mine. As a teenager, I think became second to Spy Who Loved Me. Spy Who Loved Me for obvious reasons.
Very good.
Wow.
Very good. And last but not least, we have Keith Richardson. Keith.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm Keith Richardson, and I recently joined this salubrious James Bond Club Ireland, and having lots of fun with meetups and watching films and rereading the books for these book club meetings. Glad we're limited to an hour, as Paul says. many of us don't know when to stop talking when we get going, particularly on this topic. So very much looking forward to it.
If you do go on too long, Keith actually works on Dr. Kananga's crocodile farm, so he will set some.
We will have you eaten.
Yes, we'll be eaten.
Well, here, just whenever we're just getting started here, I'm just going to ask each of the panel members, so just take it in turn. Just give us 2 or 3 sentences of how your overall thoughts.
John, before we do that, can we just introduce Michael as well?
Of course. My apologies, Michael.
Our diligent technician behind the scenes.
Yes,
Q.
yes.
Forgot that, yeah. Rest Chang. Oh, hello, Fraser. Great to have you.
Oh,
Eilish.
Hello. How's it going, Eilish?
We're sending enormous amounts of love to Eilish,
Yeah.
who is John's daughter and her entire family. And yeah, again, as I said before, we wouldn't be here without your dad. So we love you.
Hope you keep well, Eilish. Oh.
Uh-huh. Okay. Sorry, Sean, you were going to go and ask for one
just
line.
Go around the group, 2 or 3 lines from each of the panel here. Just to give us your overall thoughts of the novel, what you're expecting from this evening, and sure, then we'll get into the proper discussion. Kevin, you want to lead us there?
Can I kick it off? Okay, I'll do some last minute reading of things
nice.
I have in front of me from my notes, my 65 copy. Evolutionary, not revolutionary, if I'm going to sum it up in a way, and try and sound like I know a lot more than I claim to. This is really just kind of, for me, is Bond is evolving overall. You've got a very good story that I think when you know the background to it, and it mirrors a lot of traveling that Fleming had done at around the time, and it's definitely his musings, I think, as he was traveling, and certainly his approach. There's a lot of that in it, and there's a lot of bringing Bond, the character on, the characters, the spyware, the attitude and approach. And I know we'll talk a little bit about general attitudes at the time, but I think this is a good one off the tracks in terms of getting him established as a character beyond what we saw at Casino Royale and all of the paraphernalia that comes with it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kevin, for that. Owen, what's your thoughts?
If Casino Royale is a chamber piece, a duologue between 2 reflections, Live and Let Die is a much more kaleidoscopic, cabalistic, visceral sense of storytelling. It shows the maturation of Fleming's writing that I don't think we would get again until From Russia with Love 3 books later, where he went from sadistic fables to more intellectual, sophisticated epistles on the Cold War.
That's a journalist with a language degree in the house.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good book.
Who invited this smart arse along?
I take it you liked it then, yeah?
Yeah. Keith,
yes, it's a very good book.
Good.
Yeah, really briefly, it's my copy. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's exciting. It's I find it really descriptive, and you can see Fleming's writing style developing more. It's just been super descriptive, particularly of place and nature. I think he's quite good at that, and he goes into a lot of detail. Yeah, it's fun, exciting, and I think it has one of the best bad guys in it. Like Mr. Big is just tremendous, and the way he's written and how he's described, and just seems like he just doesn't care too much. He's so unflappable, so it's a good one for Bond to come up against.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, excellent. Sean, before we let you delve into the story synopsis, I just want to give some feedback I'm getting here on WhatsApp that unfortunately, Michael, they can't hear you, but they can hear us. So ironically, that the man who is making this technically possible is the one who can't be heard.
I think I've solved it.
Okay.
That's why I say I think I have solved it. If not, people, do you know what? I can just be happy sitting back, making sure the place, runs smoothly, and I can type in the chat, and everything should be fine. So
just in case anyone still doesn't hear him,
it's all right.
He's controlling the chat, so please send in your questions and comments, and Michael will forward them on to us.
Hey, they can
But
hear me
otherwise,
now.
He is. Hey, they can hear you.
Good.
Big win. Right, you work away. I'm happy to just.
So, but just to
back.
recap, they obviously missed the whole Chang business. So
Yes.
Michael is our Chang in the background, turning the wheel of technology. So
Yeah, making
everything
sure.
work.
I prefer to see him as the Terry Gilliam of the group.
The Terry Gilliam of the group.
I'll take
Not
Gilliam.
the Monty Python fan. Okay, all right.
Right,
All right,
well,
thank you. So, Sean, give us the story.
I'm just
synopsis,
going to
please.
give a quick rundown on sort of the story of the book, just get the discussion started. So, James Bond, now fully recovered from his lashings by Le Chiffre, is sent to Harlem to investigate Mr. Big, a voodoo baron and unlikely Smersh agent, whom M suspects is behind a smuggling operation that is funding Soviet agents in America. 17th century gold coins have been turning up in Harlem and Florida, and M believes that these are part of a large hoard buried in Jamaica by the Welsh pirate Sir Henry Morgan. Bond goes up to Harlem with CIA agent Felix Leiter, only to be captured by Mr. Big on arrival and is quizzed by mind-reading girlfriend Solitaire. Bond senses she's a trapped bird trying to escape. He rescues her, and together with Leiter they flee to Florida, where a nocturnal visit to a warehouse confirms that the treasure has been smuggled in under the sand at the bottom of fish tanks. Bond follows the trail to Jamaica alone, as Leiter has had his leg and arm bitten off by a shark at the warehouse, and Solitaire has now been recaptured. There he completes a dangerous underwater swim to Mr. Big's island and manages to plant a limpet mine on Big's boat before being discovered. He is then captured, lectured, and bound to Solitaire behind Mr. Big's boat. The pair are about to be fatally dragged under the shallow coral reef when Bond's limpet mine explodes. Mr. Big is then devoured by a shark, and Bond is granted passionate leave by M with Solitaire. And that's the novel ends there. So, passionate leave.
Passionate leave, indeed. All right, thank you for that. Okay, before we delve in, I'm going to give a few. I have written down in my notes here fun facts. You'll be the judge of that. Some are fun, some are just facts. But published by Jonathan Cape first in 1954, the cover was designed by Ian Fleming. It sold out of its initial print run of 7,500 copies, but it was banned here in Ireland. Why was it banned? Was it banned because of its view on race or use of the N-word in chapter 5? No. And we might just hand this over to Kevin O'Callaghan. Can you tell us why they were banned, or am I putting you on the spot here?
You're slightly putting me on the spot.
Sorry, Kevin.
I think if I remember right, you can correct me, but I think it had relationship to do with voodoo and the
That's
whole aspect
correct.
of it happening to it. And it was banned for about 6 weeks, I think, which tend to be the timing for most of the Bond novels in the 50s in Ireland. It was like a 6-week banning, and it would appear in the newspaper, the following publications have been banned, and it would just be one line. And in this case, Live and Let Die by Ian Fleming. And you come back 6 weeks later, the following books have been unbanned.
Unbanned.
Live and Let Die by Ian Fleming. And no description as to why at the time,
Right.
because you do not need to know.
Yeah. No, of course. No.
Is this harmful for you?
Lord has said this book is not good for you.
Down with that sort of thing.
You might get notions of being a spy yourself, perhaps.
Yes.
Maybe that was a worry, but anyway, it was banned anyway for that. I think mostly for that, protecting the sensibilities of the Irish public in the 1950s.
Yes, they're delicate because obviously the penchant for many of the Irish church-going public to switch their allegiance to Baron Samedi was a huge risk in 1954, according to the bishops. One assumes. So that is interesting. So there's probably, we do in this group strive to find any and every connection between James Bond and Ireland, as tenuous as those connections may be, or in this case, as slightly comical. All right. One of the other facts about this was it was adapted as a comic strip series in the Daily Express in 1958, and that's probably most notable. Not necessarily because it was adapted, but because of the illustrations by an artist called John McCluskey, who you've probably, any Bond fan has probably seen the McCluskey illustrations. You'd recognize that sort of really craggy look. Some say, because it predated Connery as Bond, some say that it was kind of inspiring to the producers, and when they saw Connery, they sort of recognized the McCluskey look. I'm not sure if that's 100% certain or not. But it definitely was a very standout look that was created as the first kind of image of what James Bond looked like. Part, of course, from Fleming's own drawings of him. Fleming took inspiration from his travels in the US, diving with amazingly, Jacques Cousteau. I don't know how Fleming seemed to manage to meet all these incredibly, famous and important figures of the 20th century. But for anybody who doesn't know, Jacques Cousteau was an oceanographer, probably the world's most preeminent one in the 20th century. He was also a former Marine, I believe. And before I'm just going to give my 2 cents on the book. I first read it as a teenager because I was a huge Roger Moore fan. I'd seen Live and Let Die on the TV, and so I got the book and I snuck it into my bedroom because my parents were not like, you're too young for the Bond novels. And I was like, nonsense, I've seen the films. So I read it and it was like, that was violence, finger breaking, shark eating. I was like, where's witty and urbane Roger Moore? So yeah, that was quite the revelation, but I persisted and came out the other end. And yeah, my personal feeling on this is mixed, but it is a very exciting book. So I'm going to be very interested to see where you guys go with this. So shall we kick it off with the first question? I guess it's around the plot. Okay, so what did we think of the plot? The plot, I guess, is a very much of its time, very much 20th century. It's kind of interesting in the sense that around 1954, where Britain was in the world, where America was in the world, the paranoia around like black independence groups being covers for communism was paranoia amongst British and American Secret Service, and you can certainly see that in the plot line that comes through here. So let's talk plot. Keith, maybe we'll start with you. What did you think of the plot generally?
Yeah, I think it gets it through the novel, to be honest. I don't think it's anything earth-shattering for me as a plot device to get all the way through, and it's almost like it just has to get to this showdown. He wants to come back to the Jacques Cousteau stuff, so he wants to talk about barracuda and sharks.
He does,
and he wants to be. He's going to have an island, and hence you have pirate treasure, which is, I find the pirate treasure thing a bit silly, but then it might have been much more exciting in the 50s. Wow. It feels a bit childish.
I'm all about it. I'm like, pirate treasure, I'm in.
No, it's fun as childish. I agree, it's fun as childish, but it seems a strange one in a James Bond spy thriller.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it's definitely something that Fleming, whenever he grew up, he was big into the pirates and all the treasure.
Exactly.
He's probably, like, second book out, needing more detail, making a bigger novel. He's probably searching for something. Right, I have a bit of background. I'll know a wee bit about that. I'll throw it in, but take your point.
Yeah. No, really good. But otherwise, it gets it through to all the major kind of set pieces that you have. And I think what it does strike me as when he came up with a number of set pieces that he wanted to have, so he had to string them together in a certain way. And that adds to the excitement, and it trundles along really quickly. It doesn't drag. Like it's a really quick book. You can, even though it goes a bit longer than Casino Royale, it's a much quicker read.
It is a quick read, isn't it? And Raymond Benson, who obviously went on to write a number of continuation novels in the 90s and 2000s, he wrote I have it here somewhere, the James Bond Bedside Companion, which was kind of my Bible as a teenager. There you go. And he writes in that this is the first novel that contains what he calls the Fleming sweep, which he characterizes as this sort of super engaging ability that Fleming had to grab the reader and just make unputdownable kind of nature of the books. Some people, I think some of that was kind of reflected as well in the reviews of the time. Today's reviewers maybe find that not so much the same. I'm not sure if you guys found that as well. But let's say, Kevin, do you agree that it sweeps along? Is it a fast-moving thriller for you?
I find it fast-moving, and I think that's deliberate in how he wrote it. Anyway, he's kind of going from what's familiar in terms of piracy and gold and excitement there, and he's kind of taking you on this journey all the way into the spy worldly adventure, the big fight at the end, and it doesn't stop. Every time there's a beat, you get to the end of the chapter, you're ready to go at the next. And I think for me, it is quite fast-paced for that. And like you said, I think it reflects the cultural awareness at the time, the fears of the time, the uncertainty of the time, and also kind of how the perception of folks were then. And even though with that, he still manages to just go. It's not a set piece thing. It just goes through these motions where it just keeps moving. I think even right to the end, and it's kind of right. We're done. You're
Yeah.
kind of, whoa, I got to go back. Maybe I got to read this again. Or did I miss something? There's a lot in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. Owen, what was your impression of the plot generally and the pace of it and how Fleming wrote it?
Well, it carries on from Casino Royale, which, as we said, was a very internalized schizophrenic adventure, into something much more semiotic and geographical, and it's much more aesthetic. It's very much about Bond and his environments in a way that the first one was very much about Bond and his internal journey. In this instance, it's Bond interacting with people around him, whether it's Quarrel or Solitaire. It's very much it's cast with all these intricate and interesting characters. It's predicated on these spectacular action pieces, and it's also bolstered by an energy to avenge his pal Felix, who is brutally maimed, which of course was the pretense for one of the finest films in the series, License to Kill.
I thought you were going to say A View to a Kill, but yeah, that's fine. No, that's excellent, and in fact, you raise a very good point. How do people feel like from the Casino Royale ending to Live and Let Die? Because obviously Casino Royale was written. It's actually interesting. Like Casino Royale, obviously written a little bit just before, in the year before Live and Let Die was released, hadn't yet really gotten traction among readers. Like it had, by the time he was writing Live and Let Die, it was not yet a runaway success. He was just peddling into the next novel, you know, on his relaxation in Goldeneye, following a trip to America that he'd had with Anne, his wife. Do you feel it's a worthy successor to Casino Royale? Do you think Casino Royale was better? Is it, as Keith said, is it an evolution? Is it really bringing something new out of Bond, out of Fleming? You know, is it worthy in that regard? I'll give that. Who wants to take it?
Just a very quick point from myself, just on that.
Sean.
It's one thing. Whenever I first read the novel, I was expecting like a sequel, for want of a better word, but it never went that way, and there was very little sort of reference to Vesper or whatever happened in Casino Royale. So it was sort of near a new leaf, a new start. Casino Royale is here, just different.
Sean, are you saying that Live and Let Die, the novel, is to Casino Royale, the novel, what Diamonds Are Forever, the film, was to...
Well, you kind of point there now, Paul, I must say, yes.
In terms of weak revenge.
Yeah, you know, like, because, look, at the end of Casino, Bond was out just to get all the bad men in the world.
Yeah.
And in a roundabout way, he's got after Mr. Big, one of the bad men in the world.
Yeah.
So there are, like, it's crossover, but I was expecting more of a, like, Bond is a lot more reflective. You see his mind even in this here, but there's no real, like, he jumps, like, he goes like Solitaire. I think I was reading maybe Raymond Benson or one of the other people said it. Similar description to Vesper, but he doesn't even make a connection there. He's just way on, you know, like there's not really any reference to Vesper. But look, that's just quickly.
He seems to be much more into. He's definitely wants revenge against Smirch.
Oh yeah,
but his affection for Vesper is kind of not mentioned anymore, is it? It's unusual in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the plot, it starts off obviously with Bond kind of getting his briefing from M. Is this a good scene? Is this something that you guys enjoyed as an M Bond thing? Owen, do you want to talk through that?
Yeah, it establishes the blueprint for all the further exchanges. The novels would then jump upon this exchange by showing the development between the two characters. By the time we get to You Only Live Twice, there's sort of an uncle-fatherly affection between them. And by The Man with the Golden Gun, it's flipped on the head with Bond trying to kill.
Yeah.
And all the way through, we see the extension of their fondness for each other by Vera, as only M has trusted Bond with a personal mission to enact on his behalf. So it sets the ball rolling, where it's a relationship based on professional and mutual affection, which eventually grows more familial as the books wear on.
Yeah. Keith, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I think it's a really useful technique for giving an awful lot of plot in a very short amount of time to set the reader up so that they know what's coming.
Very good.
And it does that very well. It also is littered with Fleming's own biases. Let's just say that throughout the whole thing. In how they discuss how the world is going, criminality in the world, and also the threat of the Russians and so it's interesting from that perspective too.
You touch on a really interesting point, and before we get you, Kev, to jump in on that, I think it's worth noting that discussion particularly, it brings into discussion a theme which Fleming raises, which is race. and obviously that's a thorny one to discuss. But he starts actively talking about black people as a sort of a general race and their attitudes and the fact that they have not yet produced a great criminal, as they say. And there's a whole lot of, I think, for a 21st century reader, difficult content in there. There's no point in avoiding that. And I think if we're trying to invite new readers to Ian Fleming, we kind of have to acknowledge that. We have to say, look, this is a difficult read. There's racism in this. I don't think it's actually a hatred for these other races, but it is certainly a sense of those are other. They're different from us, and they have different beliefs. And he talks a lot about like superstition, and later on about Mr. Big having animal rather than human eyes and stuff like that. And this is very challenging stuff to get through. But at the same time, this is a writer in the 1950s. You can't expect different. Many of them were the same. And you pointed out earlier on, Tantan and some other of these characters from the same time had similar attitudes built in. So this is something that I feel gives us a snapshot into the way that people felt maybe the world was changing. You can see in America as well, the civil rights movement hadn't yet really gotten momentum, so people were a little bit sort of anxious. They didn't know what to expect. So I would encourage people that if you're getting into Fleming, this is going to be a difficult subject to get around, but it's also something that you just can view as a snapshot of the political, cultural moment in time in 1954, and view it as kind of educational in that sense. Certainly not that any Bond fan today is endorsing that kind of attitude. But apart from that, it doesn't take away from the fact that Fleming writes a fantastic thriller, and this is very, very a very, very exciting novel. But I think it's worth pointing that out so that we can kind of consider that and just go, yeah, that's difficult, but geez, but we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because of that. So
if you don't mind, I might jump in.
Please do, Michael. Yeah.
Because one of the chats we got kind of pertains to this. Agatha in the chat
Hi, Agatha.
mentions that in the new edition of the book, so remember how they all got basically re-released and edited?
Yes.
For sensitivity or whatever, that the 5th chapter of the book, which we all know the title of, probably not wise to repeat it, but it got changed to 7th Avenue. Is the name?
Yes,
of the
and
title
it was previously Seventh Heaven. Is that regard? I think it was called Seventh Heaven at one point.
It might have been. I'm not fully sure about it, but I know the new edition has changed.
Yeah.
So has anyone read the new issue, the new kind of reprinting of it, or has anyone even gone back and kind of seen the differences that were made? Because it does raise an interesting point that if you are a new reader and you might be sensitive to this sort of stuff, that new issue might actually be of quite a lot of use, and you mightn't get exposed to that sort of bias Fleming had back in the day. And the other thing I wanted to say is, Lovely Fraser pointed out in the chat that Fleming was obsessed with pirates and treasure growing up. Yes. So that also kind of plays into the book.
Yes. Lovely Fraser, which is actually what his mother calls him, is 100% right. And anyone who's read the biographies, and I would particularly recommend anyone towards the Nicholas Shakespeare one, which is the more recent biography of Fleming, talks about that in detail, and it's a very, very good I suppose window into Fleming's really boyish adventure sort of mindset. So that's fabulous. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Agatha, for that comment as well. I'm going to throw that out there to the group. Do you have any comments on the way that novels have been edited recently, or the sensitivity approach to the novels? Let's not raise the ire of the whole internet here. So, just a couple of thoughts on that would be great.
I think in the wake of Black Lives Matter and in the last couple of years, I think people need to tread more carefully. So I think some mild edits isn't. It's a good way forward. I mean, it's rooted in books in the past. I mean, look at Agatha Christie and one of her books, which was renamed 10 Little Indians, which is not the original title.
Right. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think it's a good way forward, similar to what Michael said. If it opens and it makes them more accessible to more people, which is what we want, as Bond fans, you just want it to be a wider community and more people talking about it, more people reading, more people watching the movies. and that's so. I think it can't be a bad thing if that's what it achieves.
I completely agree. Keith. Yeah, so we're looking to grow the fandom every day, all the time, and whenever there isn't really a movie coming out in the next 5-10 years, maybe, who knows, we're trying to get as many new fans as possible. So if they're picking up the books and they're picking up the newer editions, so be it.
Kevin, did you have any thoughts on that?
I know it's a little bit noisy here now, but I'm just going to say it's education as well. I think read the new books, find out what they are. I know there was a lot of hype and noise on the net, of course, when these things come out. But actually, just educate. If you want to see what Fleming was like at the time and look at it through the perspective of the time, then go do that. If you don't, carry on with what you have. We want Bond fans. We want a wide range of Bond fans out there. We want to be a diverse group as it is. So I think, educate. It's no different to any other older material. If you could look old-fashioned Mickey Mouse cartoons, will have a problem there. Yeah. So, just to give an example, but I think that's what it boils down to. Educate and be open-minded to it, and steady as you go. Then.
I couldn't agree more with that. I think the ugliness is there so that we can learn from it, not so that we can sort of go, that's how we should treat people. That it's an invitation to see what it was like in 1954. But let's move on from that, because this is a great thriller and we don't want it to develop into just a race discussion. This is really, really a good book. The discussion with M at the start is really good. I find, and I don't want to jump ahead to the character development yet, but I find that it is, you have this typical sort of, there are several Bonds in it. There's the kind of Bond recovering from the previous mission. He's got the scars on his hand and it's healing, and Ben wants to know about that, and he's a bit kind of pissed off and bored, and he's mulling about London, this, that, and the other. And then when he gets his mission, he's kind of energized and ready to go, and he's off to America, and then he's vibrant and he starts noticing the signs on the windows, and he's like, he even makes waiting to get through customs seem interesting. I don't know how. You're a gifted writer if you can do that alone, So I personally found the whole, especially the New York City, but the whole American Jamaica thing, but especially the New York bit, I found really intriguing. And I was crawling through Google Maps, looking at all the locations in Northeast Harlem and stuff like that. That slowed down my progression through the novel, I have to say, but it was just great fun. And Michael, I don't know if you have any of the images that we were looking at to hand, but if anyone's interested and wants to check out our Instagram account, we have some detail in terms of the vehicles that were used to pick Bond up from the airport, the plane that he arrived in at Idlewild Airport, which is now, of course, JFK International, and the hotel that he stays in called the Regis Hotel. Now, I don't know what kind of expense accounts these dudes had in 1954, but this guy was not living rough, right? He was staying in a place called the Regis Hotel. Do you have that one, Michael, that you can show the guys where we're looking at?
I do. It's up there now.
And he and Felix go for a drink in there. I love the way, not only is he staying in a super cool, luxurious hotel in New York, but he and, his busy mate, Felix, who we'll talk about under the friendship thing, they just basically, they're drinking on the job, let's go for a drink, then we'll go up and check out Mr. Big's place, and they get a bus up, which is very un-Bond, I thought, a bus up to Harlem, and then they go drinking in places like Sugar Ray's, which is, for our younger listeners probably won't know, Sugar Ray Robinson was a famous boxer who started up a bunch of businesses in New York and did very, very well. Sugar Ray's is one of them. I think some of the ones that came after that, like Ma Fraser's, may have been made up or sort of a conglomerate of a few places around there, but those jazz clubs and the places they went into, really, really cool to look them up. Some of the descriptions he gets in there, though, Fleming really enjoys that sort of what was it you called it, Keith, earlier on, sort of jive talking or describing the jive stuff.
The jive talk pieces are a challenging read because he's not particularly good. It always reminds me of those scenes on in Airplane.
Yeah, that's right.
I speak jive, and then
it's
but I agree with you. It's great. There are some other really good descriptions in New York, just to jump in there, particularly around the clothes that American people wear, which he doesn't like.
And they make him look like an American.
Yeah.
Well, we need David Zaritsky and Matt Spazer in here for a historical sartorial snapshot of that. Actually,
But do you think that's Fleming talking as opposed to his character Bond?
I think it's Fleming.
Yeah.
Because he's worried about the. Sorry, Kev, go ahead.
I was just saying, sorry, no. I also wanted to add. I mean, his whole description of American cars and how they just take the joy out of life, and it's not as good as the European ones, and the power and the control, and this sort of comparison that keeps going on all the time. Kind of, I'm having the best adventure ever, but my goodness, I hate these.
There's a lot of niggling, isn't there? Even like, oh, you guys, he says to the FBI agent, whose name slipped out of my mind now, but he says to the FBI guy, you must have a leak. When he finds out that they know why Bond is in New York, you must have a leak, and he gets, oh, well, why do we have to have a leak? And then when he's in Jamaica later on, it's like, oh, the tourism and the American tourism in Jamaica, which is, let's just call that ironic, right? From Fleming. But there's a lot of niggling that goes on,
There is.
I don't know if anyone noticed the line as well about Celts being suspicious. I was like, when I saw that, well, I instantly threw some salt over my shoulder. Touch wood, yeah. Owen, what was your favorite part about the New York section of the adventure?
Well, building up in the relationship between Bond and Felix, it's something that the film's never quite established, with the exception of License to Kill. That the friendship never felt that genuine between them. It always felt like two rivals or two compatriots to get pitched together on a mission. What the lighter Bond relationship in the book is one based on brotherhood.
Yeah,
it's one based on utmost respect. It's one based on it continues the reflection of Bond and Lashif, only this time Bond's mirror reflection is Felix lighter, and that's something that continues in the novels. That I don't think the films really ever got, except in the cases of Thunderball and License to Kill.
Well, do you not think that David Hedison in both License to Kill and Live and Let Die had a very friendly approach? I mean, I think the New Orleans scene with Hedison seems to indicate a genuine kind of that casual rapport that he and Roger have, like they've been friends for a while.
That's probably the reason why they brought him back the second time. He was the only one.
Yeah.
That was the failing in the Craig era. I never bought the friendship between Jeffrey Wright and Daniel Craig.
Michael, can you mute Owen at this point, please?
It worked better when it was when the two of them were semi-rivals, but once in No Time to Die, it was established they were the two best of pals.
Yeah,
it came out of nowhere. It was unearned and it was undeserved. If you want to see the magic roots of friendship, return to the Holy Bible of Fleming.
Yeah, there is an argument for that. I'll concede, but pistols at dawn, Owen. That's all I'm saying. Okay, fabulous. So let's talk a little bit more about the New York scene. So Bond goes up to Harlem, starts drinking with Felix. They eventually get, which is actually shown in the film version of Live and Let Die, they get sat at a table, which then disappears down into the ground. And from there, Felix gets his nose smashed against a wall by a heavy, and then Bond is brought to Mr. Big, and finally to see Miss Solitaire. What do we think of this scene? What do we think of Mr. Big and Solitaire and their entry into the story? Let's throw that out. Sean, do you want to talk? You want to throw your ideas on that?
No, yeah. Again, I've just going back very quickly. I found the start of the book a wee bit slow and hard to get into, but the pace started picking up from here on, I would say. Definitely a bit of action coming in. I like the introduction of Mr. Big. You just get the idea of this man all wielding all power. Like even his henchmen are nervous, don't want to look at him. There's I think it's a statue behind him with the cross and the hat. Like they're just nervous. He just is wielding an awful power, but a very, I wouldn't say softly spoken, but very like slow, spoken. Like nothing seems to unnerve him. I love the wee detail of the gun in the desk. I think that was brilliant, and it's reflected later on that many of the persons obviously died with that sort of been shot at the desk, and then obviously the introduction of Solitaire. Again, I like it. It's more the. I don't know. I had the ideas of the film in my head. It was hard to differentiate the two at certain times, but definitely. I found it a wee bit strange that Solitaire straight away was latching on the Bond, and Bond could see that, and he thought to have an ally in the room straight away. But a very sort of a good but low key introduction to our villain. I definitely liked the escape that Bond was able to escape from the building. I love him getting into the garage and escaping in the car and just driving,
Yeah.
checking the mirror. I think it was brilliant. But again, whenever Bond goes back to the hotel, first thing he does is pour himself a drink.
Yeah.
Doesn't even take his coat
I
off. His
know,
hand
yeah.
is broken.
Yeah.
He pours himself a hey and hey, whatever it is, and just has a drink. And it seems like
Quite brutal, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's throw it out to the others. I just want to get an impression because we're thundering along through time
Yeah,
here,
just
and
checking
I
we're
want to
just
make
noticing,
sure that
yeah.
we get everything in. Let's talk about Mr. Big. What did you think about Mr. Big? And what did you think about? Because personally, I just found the whole discussion about I have everything I want, so the only reason I do stuff is to find the highest art and things. I was like, gee, look at this guy. There's a kind of a narcissism about this guy. And he also has like obviously there's the Yaphet Kotto portrayal of him in the film. I wondered what you guys thought the character was like on film versus in the novel. Excuse me.
I'll jump in there quickly. I thought the novel is great the way he's just described, and as a physical presence, it's so big and he has that grey pallor. But there's also, as you said, he's trying to turn criminality into an art form, and doing everything he does has a very defined purpose, and he explains it in a lot of detail.
Yes.
And I think he's written with a lot of respect, despite him being a very nasty individual. And it's great, and the fear that he instills around him. He doesn't even have to act anything; he's just there, and obviously helped with the voodooism and the fact that he's seen as the living incarnation of Baron Samedi. But I think it's great, and the comparison with the film, like Yaphet Kotto was brilliant in Living It. I thought he was fantastic in the dual role in that. His death notwithstanding, which is always something that's bugged me. But it's still really good. I don't think they could have got away with filming the death from the book. It's
pretty brutal.
Like it's for the time. It's just outrageous.
I might jump in there and read out one or two more chats as pertaining to
please.
Mr. Big, because Fraser again sometimes says. There's something to be said for the way that Fleming writes Mr. Big as being one of a credible, full main villain, which is true and interesting, I think. And also, Adam puts the notorious B.I.G.
No. Thank you, Adam. Yes, very good, very good. That would be a classic remake, wouldn't it? Yeah. Excellent.
But
brilliant.
Yeah, no, I quite like Mr. Big. I think his the way he's written, I think, is quite interesting. I think, like, just giving my little 2 cents on the book quickly, because I haven't really said that, which is fine. Leave you all the lads to it. But I read the book when I was about 14, and I reread it again there about 2 years ago, and I listened to the audiobook recently, and the audiobook, I think, actually makes it a bit more bearable. Because, like Keith said, sometimes reading it can be a bit jarring when he starts writing his jive and stuff. But the way it is done on audiobook, I think, is actually brilliant. So, if you're a person who struggles maybe reading the book a bit, I think give the audiobook a quick chance. But going back to Mr. Big, have fun.
Yeah, good. That's a good point, actually. I haven't listened to that on the audiobook format yet. And I think Rory Kinnear does one, doesn't he? I think
he does, yeah.
So any other comments on Mr. Big?
Oh, head on, yep.
Please, Owen, go ahead. Sorry, Sean. Sorry.
No, work away.
So again, going back to it's the natural continuation from Casino Royale. That's going from lust for remorse into more aesthetic and semiotic qualities. So this is like a villain from a Wilde play. It very much is about. It's very much about about seeing everything in decadent, holistic paintings. And I think Fleming's focus on this occasion isn't the triptych, so it's not villain, hero, love interest. It's it's the peopled ensemble, the characters from like M to Quarrel to Felix to all the other characters that populate this particular world that Fleming is building. It's a much more geographical world on this occasion to the internalized world of Casino Royale.
Yeah, even if it's maybe touching it very quickly in a wee bit, but the travel and the different locations, it obviously gives Fleming a chance to write more and describe more, or like describe more, should I say? But Kevin, anything just on Mr. Big? Just sum up quickly on Mr. Big.
He's a nasty character. We are not meant to like Mr. Big. Even the name and all, immediately you're just. I mean, he, like you say, he's decadent. He's smart. He's just so confident in his skill and ability, and it is that kind of counterbalance to Bond, because you see Bond and his determination, and he's getting the intel, and in that we're learning what sort of a nasty piece of work this guy is, and Bond has to stop him, and that makes it, I suppose, more satisfying as we get further on in terms of the rationale and the reasons why we're going for it. I think he's just all of those things that Fleming kind of took in snobbery and upped the ante, I think, completely in Mr. Big, with a plot line to follow. Very different for me than in the movie. I think in the movie he's kind of trying to keep on top of things and kind of distracting. You don't necessarily know the plan, but here he's like, bring it on, I'm happy to tell you everything because you're not going to stop me anyway. And I think that's the sort of tone that makes us not like him that much.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that AJ and Matthew Field brought up in their book, in that Yaput Kotto refused to play it as it was in the book, fearing for his life. He said he would have been lynched if he played it as it was. Yes, he said he genuinely had massive issues and needed to be changed. That may have caused the reason why he became Kananga, this loquacious, sturdy, stentorian figure against this honky guy, and
sure,
as opposed to some sort of pastiche. But Yaphet Kotto made it very clear that the script needed to be drastically changed if he was going to perform.
Interesting.
Paul, very quickly, if we'll touch on maybe Solitaire and Felix, just I'm conscious of time.
Absolutely. But before we do that, my one regret about the novel is that it didn't feature the line "Names is for tombstones, baby," which is one of the greatest lines in cinema ever, in my opinion. But sorry, yes, go ahead, Sean, please.
No, I just want to throw it out, just the panel, just a couple of sentences maybe in each, looking at the character of Solitaire, and also we'll just flesh out sort of Felix a bit more.
Interesting point on Solitaire, in that she seems to have come from Haiti, and has this sort of telepathic power, but is still white, black hair and blue eyes and pale skin, which is an interesting one. And Fleming puts it down to her being a sort of a daughter of a slave owner or something. But she's all kind of, I don't want to say teeth and tits, that's a bit rude, but she's kind of flirty from the get-go, isn't she? She's kind of, hey, Mr. Bond, you want to get me out of here? I'm up for that kind of thing. What do we think about Solitaire? Kev, I'm going to start with you and go counterclockwise as per my screen here, if that's okay. Kev, did you hear me that one?
Yeah, I did. Sorry, it was just coming in slowly. I think that's it. I think she's a character that's there to be saved.
Yes.
And you're right, she's full on, you get me out of here. And you hear, Fleming writing about, well, where did she come from, or how did she fall into this, and what it almost makes out it wasn't really her fault that she fell into this, but now she's assisting Mr. Big, and there's a need to save her. But can we trust her? Can we not? How does that kind of dynamic go? And obviously, we know this particular story, how it's going to go, I think, in terms of Solitaire and Bond, and there are a few references in there, Bond almost kind of chasing her avidly as well, and kind of saying, well, yeah, you'll end up with me eventually. But I think
only for his broken finger.
Only for his broken finger.
Yeah, I love the way there's a potential sex scene on the train, but no, I couldn't. My finger isn't up to it. I'm just going to call that out. That's a weak excuse, Mr. Bond. But sorry, Kev, go ahead, please.
No, I think that kind of covers it. I think we should stop there on the broken finger and say
we probably should. Keith, did you have any thoughts on Solitaire?
Yeah, very much echo what Kevin was saying there and everybody else. I think she's like a prize almost, and it's just an extra bit. And she's written to be extremely provocative and beautiful, and meeting that kind of perfect ideal of the white woman. And that she's just set up to be that. It's another plot device to get him to go after Mr. Big.
Yeah.
If something happens, I think, and that's.
because I think it personally, I think it's a slight disappointment because he sets her up really well. He says she's got a hint of cruelty in her mouth. She looks decisive. She looks like she's going to be a force, like a Tiffany Case or something. But then she's just this kind of damsel in distress afterwards, you know. But I do like the train ride with her, you know, which echoes obviously the film and stuff. But yeah, she does play into the kind of, you know, damn women getting kidnapped again. It's kind of a little bit of a. She could have been better.
Yeah.
I don't know. Owen, did you have any thoughts on her as a character?
Well, I don't think she would feature in Germaine Greer's Female Eunuch, would she?
Almost 100% no, unless for, you know, a point of how not to do it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of Fleming's great weaknesses. I suppose in his defense, he was trying to counter, you know, the perfect woman of Vesper with, you know, something more immediate and fun,
Okay.
which is perhaps how he viewed it. That to go from this idealized Hellenic figure in Casino Royale to something more immediate and slightly trashier. That is the ultimate sin in Fleming's books. Even the depiction of Tracy in the books isn't the fully realized version we see with Diana Rigg. Bond almost feels like he has to marry Tracy in the books. It's more like, oh bloody hell, I might as well get married to you then. Instead of it being you know that credit to George Lazenby, you fully believe that he's head over heels in love with this woman he's sharing in the stable with. That isn't quite so apparent in the books.
I just want to call that that's a sentence you don't hear every day, and I think we should acknowledge it. Full credit to George Lazenby. He does pull that off. That's 100% correct.
Yes, he does. So that is the sin with, like, I mean, he was very good at eroticism. The Spy Who Loved Me was 50 Shades of Bond, effectively. Though no wonder I read it when I was 14. But in terms
Sean,
of
chuck
writing,
that down for another episode. Okay, full 50 Shades of Bond with Owen.
But fully developed female characters was not his forte. Even the Moneypenny of the books is much more of a flirt than the Lois Maxwell depiction. Probably because Joanna Harwood wrote the first screenplay and helped punch up the character.
Yes.
Excellent point. Guys, I can't believe this. We're running out of time. Oh my God.
Yes.
All right, we've got 5 minutes left and we haven't even left New York. We need to get to St. Petersburg in Florida and to Jamaica. Let's do a quick summary. We know what happens basically. He goes to St. Petersburg. The plot mirrors almost exactly what happens in License to Kill with the fish tanks and putting his hand into the fish tank and finding the drugs in the film, but finding the gold coins in the book. How awesome is that? To read that, for people who've seen License to Kill and then came across this afterwards, that must be pretty exciting. And for, you know, people who read the novels first and saw the film, it's pretty cool that they did that in License to Kill. I'm sorry to go back to Owen, but Owen, you're the Dalton fan on this. Please hit us up with your thoughts on that piece.
Well, like as I said I appeared on a Bond podcast yesterday to discuss License to Kill. As I established, when I saw License, I was
give us a name drop. Tell us the name of the podcast and who was on it.
I can't. I don't know the name of the podcast, but David Lee and Bill Koenig were on it.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah. So
very good.
So I was instilled and invested in the books. So that I was elated when I saw that in License to Kill. I was finally 15 and old enough to watch a 15s film, and it was like the holy grail of Bond films. It still is.
It still is. Keith, what were your thoughts on that part of the story?
Yeah, no, it's fun and it's great that it links it back, and it's not the only one that's used in other films as well. Like this keel hauling scene is used in For Your Eyes Only to great effect. Where it actually goes through it and it's filmed magnificently. And I think they didn't use it in the film version of Live and Let Die because they weren't able to film it properly. They didn't think they could do it. But yeah, so really good scene. I like the whole one-upmanship and the battle with that guy. I can't remember the name of him.
The robber.
The robber, yes.
He was the robber, yeah. That's fun.
It is fun. He's the kind of Milton Crest kind of character in that scenario. Kevin, what were your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I know we're short on time, but I have one favorite thing I like about it is Bond's preparation for the mission and getting ready to take on Mr. Big, and he's giving up of cigarettes and not drinking for a week in terms of getting his swimming and getting into physical perfection is
yes,
I will take this advice with me everywhere I go from here on in. This is how I am the way I am today.
Yeah.
Just brilliant.
In 2 weeks, he went from looking for like Ian Fleming to Daniel Craig just by giving up the fags.
Game
Sorry
on.
for our American listeners. That means cigarettes. It's not a homophobic
Don't
slur.
go there.
Keep moving. Move on.
Yeah,
Yikes.
nothing to see here.
Yeah, that is very, very funny, and he gets trained by Quarrel in how to dive as well. You know,
Yeah.
which is great. Great to see Quarrel, of course, and
Yes.
Strangways turn up in the
Strangways,
Jamaican
yeah,
scene.
I know.
Of course, in
But-
Doctor No, the book, Bond says to Quarrel, "You need to get me nice and fit again," and Quarrel says, "I'll get you nice and fit again."
Yes, I'll get you nice and fit again. I mean, very briefly, we're almost running out of
We
time.
are running out of time.
Friendship is a huge theme in this film as well. I mean, and
I'm going to just cut in. I think we're under a minute, so I think
under a minute.
unfortunately we probably have to wrap this up.
Let's wrap it
So-
up. Let's say thank you to everyone for joining. Thanks to everyone on YouTube for pitching in and throwing us questions. We may actually pay for a little extension on Google next time so that our Moonraker session can be a little bit longer.
And we won't be cheap. Yeah, we'll be fine.
If I can speak for everyone, I had a great time with this. Thank you all for this, and let's do it again soon. All right.
Thank you,
And as
everyone.
you say,
Thanks.
Paul,
Bye.
we will return with Moonraker.
We will return with
James
Moonraker.
Bond Club Ireland will return.
Right, guys.
Bye.
All the
Bye,
best, everybody.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, then. Cheerio.